Okay, thank you. And again, welcome to those who've just joined. Today, we're going to be talking about CIHT, obviously. I'm going to be starting by talking a little bit about CIHT, just an introduction, our membership grades, and then the benefits of CIHT, including CIHT Learn, our online training platform. Then I'm going to hand over to our two main speakers, Deborah Sims, who's going to talk in detail about applying for CEng as an academic, and then to Glenn Hingerty, who similarly will be talking about applying for Chartered Transportation Professional as an academic. Then hopefully we'll have a little bit of time for questions and answers at the end. As I say, we're joined today by Deborah and Glenn. We also have my colleagues, Greg and Kat from the education team, sitting in the background as well. As I say, we do have time for questions and answers at the end. If you can put your questions in the chat, we'll address those at the end. It just helps with the continuity. And on that note, this session is being recorded, and we're planning to put the recording onto YouTube or a similar platform after the event. So if you have any issues with that, please do let us know. Okay then, so as I say, my name's David Mead. I'm the Membership and Services Manager here at CIHT, and I'm going to start by just giving a brief introduction to the institution. You can see our vision and our mission of the institution on the screen, to be the leading professional highways and transportation body, promoting safe, accessible, inclusive, economically and environmentally sustainable transport infrastructure. And similarly, our mission is to advance for the public benefit, which I always think something really needs to be underlined, for the public benefit, the science and art associated with highways and transportation infrastructure and services, and to promote associated education, training, research and development. Now, as well as our vision and mission, we also have three overarching themes, and you'll see these themes reflected in everything that we do. And these themes are climate action, professionalism, and ED&I, equality, diversity and inclusion. And we do put those at the forefront of our output, and hopefully you'll see that reflected in CIHT's output. CIHT was formed in the 1930s. Our traditional base were highway engineers, and we do still have many members in that role. However, we are a lot more than that today. Sometimes when I give presentations, I talk about myth busting. And I think the first myth that we need to bust is that we are just for engineers. That is absolutely not the case. On the screen, you can see a word cloud that has some of our members' job titles. And hopefully these reflect the diversity of our members working in all areas of the highways and transportation sector. What I should say from the outset is this presentation is designed for you, for the academics, but obviously you're working in a university setting. So hopefully a lot of these messages can be passed on to your students as well. So as I say, I'm focusing really on you today, but again, some of the messages please do pass on to your students. Success of CIHT is in many ways down to the commitment of our active volunteers. So we do have a central staff based in London, but really it's our volunteers who give up their time, as Glenn and Deborah are today, give up their time for CIHT, and that is an invaluable resource that we have. We currently have over 10,000 paying members based all over the UK and the rest of the world. In the UK, these split geographically into 14 regional nations, as well as the international groups you can see on the screen. Now, all our committees, I have to say, would be absolutely delighted to have a representative from a local university join them and to get involved in the activities, the webinars, the events, the social aspect of it. If there is any interest in joining a committee as a member, please do get in touch. Our email address will be towards the end of this presentation. CIHT is primarily a membership body for individuals. However, we do have strong ties with organisations through our partnership network. Our research and innovation partners offer the connection between industry and academia through sharing their research and active participation in discussions, workshops and consultations. They benefit from direct communication with industry partners, access to possible funding opportunities, collaboration and knowledge sharing across the network. And again, on behalf of your university, if you're interested in becoming part of the partnership network, please do get in touch. Okay, looking at our membership grades, again, one myth I need to bust is that it's difficult to join or there's some sort of arduous process to join. This is absolutely not the case. Joining CIHT as a member is a really straightforward process, and all of you will be able to join as a member. As you can see, we have apprentices and students, so this will hopefully be a message for you to pass on. If you're teaching apprentices or indeed students, they can join for free. Full-time students are free. For part-time students, there is a small fee. It's very open in terms of entry criteria. Many of our students will be studying transport planning or civil engineering, but we do also get lots of people joining with geography backgrounds. So if they're studying geography or similarly, they are very welcome to join. Once someone has completed their degree and does not yet have 3 years professional experience, they can become a graduate member of CIHT. We are very welcoming, and we pretty much don't turn people down. If you're interested in highways and transportation, you can join, and we're not an exclusive club. So we're open to the people who do not have degrees. So if someone doesn't have a degree and doesn't yet have 3 years professional experience, they can join as an associate member. Similarly, we have the associate graded membership for those who maybe work in aligned professions. So maybe they work in marketing, HR, recruitment, for example, who want to be associated but don't work directly in highways and transportation. They can also join as an associate. The vast majority of people join as a member, MCIHT, and the entry criteria is really simple. You need to be working in the field of highways and transportation for at least 3 years. Now, that does include your work as an academic. So if you've been working in academia in highways and transportation for at least 3 years, you can join as a member. And finally, we have the fellow grade. These are people who work in senior and influential roles, who've worked in highways and transportation for, there's no set number of years, but we say at least 2 years. And again, this is absolutely open to everybody. Some people will transfer from member to fellow. That's the most common route, but you can also join directly as a fellow. And obviously that is very much open to academics. Okay, so why should people join? The first reason for joining is access to professional qualifications. Now, I'm assuming that's the reason why many of you are on today's call. And I'm not going to steal Glenn and Deborah's thunder. What I should say from the outset is that the access to professional qualifications and membership are separate at CIHT. Many of our members will join as members and remain as members, and they'll never apply for CEng or any of the other qualifications. That's absolutely fine. Many of our members aren't engineers, so they can't become chartered engineers or transport planners. So you do not need to pursue professional qualifications if you don't want to. Of course, if you do, we're very supportive of that and very encouraging of that, and we will help you through the process. But I think one key message is the two are separated at CIHT. CIHT will help you gain greater understanding of changes taking place within the sector. We have a lot of CPD output, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, news articles, magazines, etc. CIHT helps progress your career. Having the CIHT badge, if you like, will help you stand out. And it's a sign to everybody that you're part of this active network. And finally, and I think in many ways the most important reason, is that you become part of a relevant professional community. Now, I have to say at CIHT there is a community. There are like-minded professionals who come together and, as I say, share knowledge, share their experiences with one another, and it really is a genuine community feel. One of the main benefits of joining CIHT is access to our online learning platform, CIHT Learn. I'm not going to go into huge amounts of detail in this presentation, but please do check it out. There's a wealth of resource on there. We have over 60 learning courses that are free to members. The CPD dashboard tracks your development. The professional learning is obviously focused on highways and transportation. All have been quality reviewed and are CIHT accredited. The courses are engaging and packed with interactions, videos, games, etc. Modular bite-sized courses. So it really is a great resource, and I would take a look at that both for yourself and maybe for your students to have a look at too. We have a course called An Introduction to Highways and Transportation, and that will be available to students as well. We also have, this is really is a selection of recent courses that may be of interest to you. Planning Highways and Transportation for people with dementia, Planning for Design and Cycling, Carbon Calculation, and Introduction to AI, etc. This is only a tiny snapshot of the courses, the CIHT Learn courses available. Please, I encourage you to take a look at the what's available there for you. Another benefit of membership is the more traditional, I guess, TP magazine, Transportation Professional Magazine, which is available in hard copy and online. And as you can imagine, packed full of articles around the sector. And we often use recent award entries. So it really does give a practical, real life examples of what's happening in the industry. Again, I'm sure a benefit for both yourself and for your students. Another great benefit of CIHT membership are our events and webinars. I've just put a selection on here. Some are obviously very close and some are actually in the past, but I just wanted to give a sample of what the types of events that we offer. We can see our masterclasses, which are run by the CIHT sort of staff team. They'll choose a subject every month and have a panel of experts come together and sort of tackle an individual subject area. What else you can see on the screen there is really a mix of in-person sort of conferences, site visits, and webinars that are accessible to everybody. Some of them will pick up on really quite niche topics, niche subject areas. Others will be more general. So again, it's a fantastic resource, and all the webinars are recorded. So once you join as a member, you'll have access over the last couple of years worth of webinars. So again, a resource that's absolutely worth checking out. And again, if as an academic in the future, if you're looking to maybe talk to our wider membership about some of the research or some of the work you've been doing, I'm sure our regions and nations will be absolutely, delighted to hear from you with a view to organising a presentation. And you can reach a wide audience. As I say, we've got 10,000 paying members at the moment. Sadly, not all of them will attend the webinar, but it's a great way of reaching a wide audience if you want to do that. And again, you can do that through your CIHT membership. Okay, and I appreciate that really was a whistle-stop tour of CIHT membership. So we're a professional body specialising in highways and infrastructure. Joining CIHT is a simple and straightforward process. There's no interview required. You all are in the sector. You'll absolutely be able to join as a member. There are no issues there. Once you've joined, you have letters after your name and access to all the resources I've just talked through. And as I say, we offer routes to professional qualifications, including CEng and CTPP. See more of which coming up right now. In terms of contacting us, the membership email address is kind of the easiest one to get in touch with in terms of membership. We're a fairly small team. Take a note of that, and if we're not the right team to help you, we'll certainly pass you in the right direction. Okay, so as I say, that was quite a quick tour of membership. If you want to have any membership questions, please do put them in the chat, and I'll try and address those as we get to them. But now I'm going to pass to Deborah Sims. Deborah's the academic lead for civil engineering at the Professional Engineering Wing of the Royal Engineers at Brompton, Kent, responsible for delivering undergraduate degrees accredited by the University of Greenwich and postgraduate degrees accredited by Cranfield University to soldiers and officers of the British Army. Prior to that, Deborah was a senior lecturer in the School of Engineering at Greenwich, following a career in industry as a road safety and highway engineer. Deborah is a chartered engineer and has been a professional reviewer for over 20 years. She is a member of the Education Professional Development Strategy Board and is a CIHT nominee on the JBM. So I'll pass over now to Deborah.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you. I'm just going to try and present my presentation, but We were having a few minor hiccups earlier, so bear with me. Okay. So let's see if we can get this working. Okay, hopefully you can see that.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can hear me. That's great news. Hello, everybody. Yes, thank you for that introduction, David. I'm going to be talking about professional registration as an academic. The first myth to bust is that you can, in fact, become professionally registered as an academic. I've spoken to quite a few people who said, oh, no, you can't do that. You have to be a practicing engineer. It sometimes helps if you've got an engineering background, but even if your whole career has been in academia, I promise you, you can become professionally registered. There are three. That doesn't look good, does it? Hopefully my mouse won't die. There are three levels at which you can become registered. Chartered engineer, highest, most senior level of registration, generally looking for a slightly higher academic base. You would have greater responsibility for people, projects, policies, etc. More likely, but not exclusively, you would be a department head, a portfolio manager, leader of a research group, etc. Then we have the incorporated engineer. These are the much more specialized people in one or more areas, module leaders responsible for specific research, usually some responsibility for people or policy, but if they do, it's at a much lower level. Engineering technicians, they can be people in your labs or people responsible for some levels of educational support, etc. So it's about liaising with the team at CIHT to see which is the right level for you. But as David sort of alluded to, why would you want to? Presumably you're on this webinar, so you have some ideas. So just jot down now a few ideas as to why you think professional registration might be for you, what you think some of the benefits might be. Okay, we haven't got a huge amount of time, so I'm going to press on, but it is quite useful, I think, to actually articulate and write down why you would think this is a route to go through, a path that you want to follow. Some of the ones that I thought might be relevant would be professional recognition, so just getting recognition of your status as an engineer. Personally, I don't think we're recognised enough by society. Credibility with your colleagues. I know what that's like in academia. It's all about your qualifications and your letters after your name, etc. One of the really strong ones for me is an example to students. If we are training young people to be chartered or incorporated engineers, to have that qualification ourselves, I think is really important. Could be a recognition of your time in industry. So if you've had a career before you came into academia, this is quite a good way to get that recognised and mark that. Or, as I say, it could be a recognition of your time in academia and the things you've done within your university and your institution. Really useful one is networking and contacts. Certainly, both in my current role and my previous role, getting the students engaged with industry, getting them out on site visits, getting them to technical meetings. All of that is so much easier if you've got a network of professionals that you can contact through your professional body and if you have that professional recognition. Staying up to date in your field. I won't labour what David's just said, but all of that good stuff from CIHT is available to you as a professional member, and it's a really good way of making sure that your teaching is current. You may have a desire to get involved with us as a learned society, so you might want to be doing particular research, feeding back on some of the white papers and some of the policy that we're working on. All of that stuff is really powerful and adds to your CV. Or it could just be, and this is not totally a cynical one, but you've got an upcoming JBM visit. As the Joint Board of Moderators, we go around with other professional bodies and we ask for 50% of teaching staff to be professionally qualified. And I know for some institutions that can cause quite a panic because they don't have anywhere near those levels of qualified academics. Something you should be familiar with is the UK standard for professional engineering competence and commitment, UK spec. I'm not going to go into that in detail today, but you've got 4 competencies and 1 commitment that you need to be able to evidence in your portfolio. Read through that, have a look at that document, and hopefully you'll quickly see that This is actually a fairly straightforward standard, and even from an academic point of view, relatively easy to evidence if you've got the right experience. So the process: become a CIHT member, as David's just outlined, read up all of the guidance and the resources we have on the website, contact the team. I've heard from so many people, they're super helpful and they really will shepherd you into the right direction. Get your initial assessment done. That could be that's a very simple process that will tell you whether you're going down a standard route or what we call an individual route, based largely on your educational background. Prepare your portfolio of evidence. Again, if you're used to preparing academic papers and research papers, I think it's quite a straightforward process, and you build that up over a period of time. It's online application. You're then called in for interview, or more usually it's an online interview, and then you sit back and wait for your hopefully successful letter advising of your result. In terms of getting ready for review, ensure that your work covers a broad range of activities, so don't go too deep and narrow. Get involved with teaching, with research, with admin, university life, anything and everything that adds to your portfolio of experience. If you get the opportunity, or if you don't get the opportunity, seek them out. Get involved with university-wide initiatives. So that could be an EDI policy, it could be health and safety, sustainability, sitting on the ethics committee, doing some work on curriculum development, assessment policy, or things that link you to industry. Anything that will broaden your experience and your CV in terms of university life. Think about taking responsibility for a specific project. If you haven't got much health and safety on your CV, you don't have that kind of experience, then find something, maybe a new lab or something, that will have health and safety aspects. International stuff is really useful as well because it gives you a different perspective, or anything related to industry. Think about the relevant legislation that covers your work and the work your students will be going into. Codes of practice, university regulations, CDM 2015, the Equalities Act, Health and Safety at Work Act, all of these things will give you a broader set of experience and evidence to pick from when you put your portfolio together. Think about getting involved with budgeting and commercial aspects as well. So it could be budgets for new equipment, setting up a new lab, looking at collaborations with partners in the UK and abroad, setting up new programs, anything that has a commercial or budgetary aspect to it. Thinking about procurement and ensuring that you have familiarity with relevant financial and contractual requirements in your university, in your sector, as broadly as you can. And be familiar with standard forms of contract. For civil engineers, that tends to be NEC. There are other contracts as well, but maybe within your university environment, there'll be something a bit different. But make sure you're familiar with that and you can talk about it confidently. Engage in CPD. It kind of goes without saying for universities, but do make sure you engage in a broad range of CPD. That could be technical meetings, webinars, conferences, seminars. As David's already covered, a lot of that is available to you through CIHT. Any professional engineering development that can be added to your CPD record. Make sure you're up to date on any changes in DMRB, government policy in this area, JBM practice, engineering council updates, ethics, sustainability, risk. Climate change is a big one. You will get questions at interview about climate change, climate crisis, sustainability, and carbon literacy. Fortunately, as David said, all of these are covered, or most of these are covered through CIHT Learn. So you've got that as a supporting resource. I won't cover this in detail again, but engage with CIHT. You'll almost certainly be asked to interview how you engage with your local committee. There are also national working groups. You can be a technical champion. Lots of different ways of getting involved with the institution. All of this to be put in or covered in your portfolio of evidence. This is part of the overall evidence that you present. So you have your portfolio of evidence that we look at beforehand, you have a project presentation, and then obviously there's a more formal interview where your responses provide some of that evidence. So what are we looking for? I'm not going to read all these out. You can look at these later on the slides, but a whole range of things demonstrating that you are a chartered or incorporated engineer or an engineering technician. It all goes back to UK spec, and these are the kinds of things that we use as evidence to show that you've met those four competencies and that commitment. Some of them might be tricky for an academic, and I think this goes back to the first point about, oh, you can't possibly become a chartered engineer as an academic. I agree. Some of them, and these are the ones I've highlighted, do seem to be more of a challenge for some, not all, some academics. So you might be able to teach the theory, but maybe you can't think of any real life scenarios. Get involved with industry. You might be collecting and analysing data, but you can't then correlate that or extrapolate that to show how that informs decision making. You may not get opportunities to exercise independent judgment, or it might be more difficult to evidence that. As I've already said, you may not have experience of contract management. You might know the health and safety side of things, you may even teach that, but perhaps you haven't got involved in the risk side of things. Maybe you haven't put together risk assessments or done risk mitigation and risk monitoring. Quality management. There are quality management systems in universities, but they can be quite different to industrial quality management systems. So have a look at that one. And leadership and people management. You may have very large classes of students that you're managing on a daily basis, but actually finding and evidencing your leadership and people management can be more difficult. They're not impossible, and I've seen a lot of candidates from academia who would tick all of these boxes with no problems. So again, won't read these out because they are all on the website, but these are the kinds of things that we see in evidence that show not just the academic background and the learning and the theoretical side of things, but how these are applied to real world situations. So that's one there about soil stiffness and strength and foundation settlement. This is around health and safety and showing that link between understanding health and safety and actually applying that, in this case, on risk assessments for students doing geology field trips. And this one was around a research budget, so preparing their funding proposals, managing that budget, reporting back to the funder, and generally keeping an overview of all of those budget aspects, which a lot of academics will do, but maybe they don't always see that as being part of the financial aspects in the same way as perhaps managing a contract budget or construction budget. And this one is around ethics, which again is very significant in universities. So giving an example of how they challenged the ethics committee and asked for evidence about a military application of the research. Another thing that does concern academics sometimes is the presentation, which I find a bit strange because it should be the easy bit for us. It's something we do every day. Finding a project that is specific and easy to define can be quite difficult. So thinking through what you're actually going to be comfortable to present, presenting something that's actually about you and what you've done can be a challenge as well. Thinking about all of the competencies in UK spec and trying to draw those out in your presentation. Being interesting and presentable, something which really tells a nice story in 15 minutes so that people are able to really relate to that. Having something where you are personally responsible. Again, in academia, we tend to work in teams, so it's quite difficult to get up in front of people and say, well, I did this and I'm totally responsible for that. And if I hadn't been there, this wouldn't have happened. But that's what we're looking for. You as an individual, not you as a member of a team. Yes, team working is important, but actually we're looking for your personal attributes. Something that has a clear positive outcome. It's surprising sometimes when people present things as part of their presentation that clearly didn't go well and didn't necessarily reflect very well on their competencies and their commitment. So do make sure you choose something that tells a good positive story. And this is all about demonstrating that you have the communication skills and the interpersonal skills that we're looking for at one of the levels of registration. So thinking about what you might be able to present, again, a very long list of things here, mainly because I've had comments from academics that they don't have anything to present. I promise you, if I was to sit down with you for 10, 15 minutes, you told me about your career and the kind of things you're doing, we would find a selection similar to this. lots of different things that I think you've been involved with and that would be suitable for presentation. So to reiterate then, it's all about you. What did you do? What difference did you make? What engineering problems did you solve? What innovation did you bring? What skills, knowledge, learning did you apply? How did you reflect on your contributions? So if you were to do it again, what might you do differently? And do you meet the standard? David has covered quite a lot of this, so I'm not going to go through this in huge detail. We do offer all of these qualifications. We have CIHT Learn, really, really useful resource. I use it myself quite regularly. Lots of good stuff in there. Very bite-sized, very easy to access. Lots of information and updates, transportation professional, but loads of other things as well. So if you are interested, if this hasn't put you off and you think, yes, this is something I would like to do and that I can do, go for your initial assessment. It's just your CV and academic details. Wait to be told whether you're going the standard route or the individual route. Do use the website. There's lots and lots of resources on there. If you think there's something missing, let us know and we'll put something on there. And remember, all CIHT guidance is in the highways and transportation sector context, but that in itself, as David showed you earlier, is very broad. So don't just think, oh, I haven't done any highway engineering. If you are involved in transport in any shape or form, then we have a route for you. That's me done. If there are any questions, I think we're going to pick those up at the end, aren't we, David? So I'll hand over to Glenn now.
Thanks, Deborah. I will just see if I can share these slides. Can I just get confirmation that those slides are visible, please?
Yeah, we can see that. Apologies, Glenn, I didn't give you your introduction, but do you want to carry on?
Yes, I will do now, just in the interest of time. Yeah, thanks very much, David. So good afternoon, everybody. My presentation today pertains to the Chartered Transport Planning Professional aspect of personal professional accreditation with CIHT. I think there was a comment in the chat there recently in relation to what options are available for people who are not an engineer, and this is certainly one of them. Okay, so I'm going to give an international academics perspective to this. I say international, I'm based outside the UK, and I know some of the people on the call today certainly are based outside the UK, but what I will discuss is also relevant for those in the UK as well. But I think it's important to mention, especially as CIHT are looking to grow the international offering. So this is a summary of my career to date, and I suppose it's quite relevant in terms of where I'm at and how I got to the point I'm at today. So currently I'm assistant lecturer at the School of Transport and Civil Engineering at Technological University Dublin. I'm also chairperson for our MSc in Sustainable Transport and Mobility programme. That's a multidisciplinary programme delivered by ourselves and our Architecture and Planning School. It is professionally accredited by CIHT for the Transport Planning Professional accreditation. I also, on a part-time basis, do road safety audits and quality audits within industry, which is something that I picked up while working in industry. I will admit that I am an engineer. I've an undergraduate, postgraduate qualifications in civil engineering from University College Dublin, but I will stress that the transport planning profession is definitely not just for engineers, and it's something that very, very much needs to be multidisciplinary, and our master's program certainly reflects that. It's perhaps not the case for other academics on the call, but I do have a number of industry or years of industry experience, both on the public and private sector. I worked in Jacobs for many years. I was also working in the National Transport Authority, which is an Irish equivalent to Transport for London, while doing some part-time lecturing. So my career has probably flipped in 2021. Previously working in industry full-time, part-time teaching. Now I'm working primarily in academia with some part-time consultancy work. Down the bottom, professional accreditation. So I did complete the Chartered Engineer assessment successfully with Engineers Ireland in 2019. And I also then subsequently completed the Chartered Transport Planning Professional qualification with CIHT in 2022. So that was after me transitioning into academia, if you like. So in terms of the assessment, it was probably a 50-50 input in terms of my industry experience and my academia experience in terms of how you sell yourself or how you include what is in your application. So why should you complete transfer planning professional accreditation? So this is what's on the CIHT website. It's more geared towards people working in industry. I think Deborah alluded to some of this later. From an academic perspective, it's more qualifications, it's more strings to your bow, if you like. You've got more postnomials, etc. Why should an academic achieve CTPP or work towards that as a goal? So for me, why did I complete this? So I'm involved with CIHT locally on the Republic of Ireland committee as a volunteer. I'm also chairperson of our Sustainable Transport and Mobility Programme, and I certainly do work towards mentoring in that capacity. Now, our programme is multidisciplinary. We have a lot of industry guest lectures, and I also do some mentoring with some of the people who are lecturing on that programme as well to work towards the CTPP qualification. And I'm also keen to help grow and support the presence of the CTPP application here in the Republic of Ireland. So for me, it was a personal thing in terms of leadership, similar to what Deborah said earlier, that, if you're teaching on a program, it's really important to have the qualification that works towards. And similarly, I'm involved with committees with Engineers Ireland, and I also teach on our traditional, if you like, undergraduate civil engineering program. So it's important for me to have both of those qualifications in terms of my teaching overall. So routes to CTPP, some of this is available on the CIHT website, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but there are 4 primary routes. The standard route, if you have an accredited CTPP approved master's program under your belt. You may not. I certainly didn't. So consequently, I completed the portfolio of technical knowledge approach. If you have maybe 20 years experience, it may be possible for you to complete the senior route, or there's also the opportunity for a technical route as well. So if you have completed an approved master's degree, there's a list on the CIHT website. Ours is listed there as well. Again, you may not have that qualification, but there are still opportunities for you. So for the portfolio of technical knowledge, or PTK, you will need to have a bachelor's degree. Again, engineering is not a requirement. You do not need to be an engineer to be a transport planner. And indeed, we have students on our accredited program who come from planning backgrounds, economics, geography, business consulting, various different routes to becoming a transport planner. It's just, I suppose, a coincidence, if you like, that I am an engineer, but we very much don't need to have that qualification. Master's degree is advantageous. I did have one, and in my case, my degree probably had about a 60% overlap in terms of what CIHT would normally require in terms of learning. So it is useful to have specific learning in terms of developing your portfolio of technical knowledge from your own education, and that can also be from a PhD as well. If you've completed a PhD as well, there's a lot of learnings in that in terms of designing research, implementing that research. And once you complete your PTK, then you can go on to portfolio of evidence and your professional review. Yeah, as I say, module descriptors from university can be a really useful thing. The university I studied at, I was able to access those module descriptors based on the specific detail from when I studied in that university, as opposed to any subsequent changes. So it was relevant, and then I was able to cross-reference that directly back towards the grade transcripts from that university. If you've completed training courses, that can also be useful as well. I had completed the Engineers Ireland chartership previously, so there was some relevant information with that. CPD records, really, really important as well. And it's worthwhile starting to think about CPD and logging that and the type of CPD that you require, carrying out a gap analysis to see where your gaps are for any approach of professional application. So portfolio of evidence is inherently going to be a little bit different if you're taking the CTPP route and you're an academic. I'm an academic, but I don't have the same level of academic experience as other people may have. I work in a technological university, so there's a greater focus on technical teaching and learning. So industry experience is a specific requirement for us. That's not necessarily the same for everybody else. I would say that while academic papers are really useful in terms of how you include those, it is important to be considered in terms of how you sell your learnings or your achievements. Don't just fill the application with lists of academic papers. I think it's really important to frame your achievements in academia and research in a specific way. So we all work in sales. Doesn't matter what your job title is. We all work in sales. I coordinate a master's program and I sell that to industry, even though I'm an academic. So it's about framing how you've achieved the requirements, if you like, or how you're going to portray that evidence. I think Deborah alluded to this earlier in terms of how people may consider that you're not necessarily up to the standard if you are an academic, but it's all about just drilling into what you've actually done and thinking about that in a logical way. I was mentoring a previous student recently for the civil engineering accreditation with Engineers Ireland, and she was concerned that she hadn't been involved in using best practice. But when we actually drilled down into it, she'd been involved in a research project that was developing best practice. So it's all about how you sell your achievements. Competency levels for CTPP, I won't spend too much time on it, but different levels for different sections: proficiency, experience, knowledge, and awareness. Different requirements for each of those units. For CTPP assessment, just briefly, just looking at the top there, professional leadership. So you don't need to be a line manager in industry to have that experience. So you could be leading a research project or a team of researchers, and that's still relevant for what you do. So I mentioned our master's program. I was involved in applying for the accreditation for that program as part of my role. So that's certainly something I would have included in the professional leadership. Communication, collaboration skills. Academics talk for a living, stand up in front of people and communicate in various different forms, be it written or spoken. Collaborate with various different other academics for research purposes. Personal commitment to professional standards, and the profession can be various broad different approaches. I'm not going to go through all of these. Data as an example, I'm at the point at the start of the academic year where discussing research projects with students, and the three main questions are, what data are you going to use, where's it going to come from, what are you going to do with it? Data is involved in all different types of research, but it's about considering what are our data sets in those processes. Okay. So in terms of records and what you should start thinking about and collating for your application, a project diary can be really useful, or a research diary. I did this. I was responsible for that. I took the lead on this specific initiative. It's not we. Even if you're involved in a team, it's about what you did, and how you led a specific task or a specific initiative. And thinking about this now, if you want to consider your accreditation in 2 years' time, is useful. Again, it can help you with your gap analysis. You may or may not do annual appraisals or professional reviews in the university that you teach in, but that can also be useful as well if you need to discuss with your manager or your supervisor in terms of how you can fill those gaps. CPD, there are requirements for that, and you do need to include those in your portfolio submissions. So if you are planning, for example, to submit in 2026, it's worthwhile starting to think about now about keeping your list of CPD, keeping evidence that you've completed those, certificates of those, training courses, if that's what you're doing. They're all relevant in terms of including for your portfolio submission. Sponsors and mentors. Typically, ideally, you'll have two of them. If you're working in industry, it's good that they are somebody that you may work with or may know. Not typically your line manager, but in academia, it's a little bit different because it's unlikely that there may be somebody else with that experience in your department. It could be the case, but I would imagine it's unlikely. CIHT can support you in finding an academic mentor. I certainly supported somebody at a different university through a CIHT request recently in developing their application. So yeah, do get in touch with a mentor. And as Deborah alluded to earlier, you sit down with a mentor, they can help drill into your experience and identify where specific experience is relevant. Just conscious of time, some high-level information there that I've included from CIHT in terms of different routes for applying for a CTPP qualification. And yeah, I think we're just about at question time now, David.
Thank you, Glenn. That's great. And thanks, Deborah, as well. Yeah, if now is the perfect time for questions. If you want to put your question in the chat, we'll try and address them directly. Alternatively, if you do want to turn your microphone on, please do that as well. I think the chat reflects already the power of being involved with CIHT in the network, you can already see Deborah's making connections with people. And this really is something we see all the time at CIHT. People getting in touch with each other, people sharing knowledge, people helping each other out. And, you know, it's a great example of what goes on kind of every day within the CIHT community. So, yeah, thanks. That's a great example. I did see there was a couple of questions around membership as well. So just to reiterate, if you want to just be a member, I say just, become a member of CIHT, it's a really straightforward process. The online application just takes a few minutes. We need a copy of your CV. The fact that you're on this call today, you'll be a member. There's no question about that. You do need a proposer and a seconder. Again, it's a really straightforward process. That person can be a member of CIHT or any of the other professional institutions. There's too many to mention here, but we'll help with that. We'll get that one through. Thank you. That's very kind. Kat and Greg, if there's anything you want to add to this session, please do. We have got a few minutes. If I've missed any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, David. I think most of the questions have been responded to in the chat. We did receive a query regarding finding a mentor. So if you yourself don't have a mentor and would like to speak to someone, please do get in touch with the education team, and we will certainly try and put you in contact with somebody suitable. Or, of course, make some internal inquiries to see if you have any colleagues who are already professionally registered as well. Apart from that, I mean, I was going to ask Deborah something, if that's okay. Deborah, your presentation focused heavily on the portfolio of evidence, and I thought it might be worthwhile to maybe speak about the appendices and the importance of appendices to kind of substantiate the comments that you make in the portfolio.
Yeah, it's a really good question. The portfolio of evidence, the 4 competencies in the commitment are word limited, so you can only write 500 words, which for an academic is an absolute, you know, such a challenge to get down to those sort of word counts. What you do is you use those 500-word summaries to signpost to the evidence that's in your appendices or should be in your appendices. And that's where you put in things like the risk assessments, the budget management sheets, the evidence of communication, whatever it is you're trying to evidence. I think it was a point that Glenn made. As academics, we tend to write an awful lot of papers and research papers, etc. Just having 17 pages or whatever it might be of titles of research projects doesn't really give the reviewers anything to work from. I know what goes into a research project, and I can probably extrapolate to think, well, you must have done some bidding for funding, you must have managed the budget in some way, you must have done some research management, you must have done some risk analysis, etc. But none of that is actually shown explicitly if it's just a list of papers. So you do have to actually get that evidence and put it in your appendices. And choosing and selecting the right piece of evidence can also be a challenge. Some people seem to take this view that you bung everything in and let the reviewers pick it out. Again, not terribly helpful. Find a really strong piece of evidence, something that really does show that particular competence, those skills, that knowledge, whatever it might be. Use that in preference to half a dozen, perhaps more mediocre ones. Is that what you were hoping I'd say, Greg?
That was perfect. Thank you.
And
I think yes, of course, Glenn, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I might just add to what Deborah said there, certainly in terms of the appendices, and it's certainly something that I discovered when I was applying myself. I think there is, I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, there's some limit in terms of how much you can put in the appendices as well. So again, as what Deborah said, you know, you shouldn't just fire all the papers in as appendices either. It's about targeting specific areas. It could be the methodology and research application on a specific paper. You may just put in a page or two from that paper. You don't necessarily need to be including the abstract and the literature review and everything else. It's about taking a really refined and targeted approach. And it's also about making it logical for your assessors as well, rather than, as Deborah said, expecting the assessor to go through everything. The assessors ultimately are volunteers as well. And as academics will all know, you know, you typically tend to appreciate the student that makes their own submission or coursework that bit easier for you to grade or assess. And it's the exact same thing here, only we're on the other side, so to speak.
That's great. Thank you both. And just to kind of reiterate what you've already said, I believe for TPP and engineering, there is a 50-page limit for appendices. So you do need to kind of try to be concise with the documentation you're including. Apart from that, the only other thing, David, that I'd probably add, Deborah said about the initial assessment, that really is the first stage for anybody who's interested in engineering qualifications or TPP. There's a slightly separate form for both, but they're very similar in appearance. So if you are interested in just getting some confirmation of your route as a very kind of starting point to the process, that form should only take no more than 5 minutes. It's free of charge for members and non-members, and you'll usually receive an outcome email from the education team within a couple of working days, and that will kind of give you a steer as to the next steps. And I think Kat's put in the links now to those initial assessments, which is great.
So
and I think that's it for now, David.
Yeah, sorry, Kat, I put the link in twice. Yeah, thanks everyone. I'm assuming there's no more questions. Thanks for joining today, and special thanks to Glenn and Deborah for your time and your wisdom. As I say, this recording will be made available at a later date. So again, thank you for joining. I wish you a pleasant afternoon.